Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA. Ocala.
All right, 20 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. The other day we had a very interesting debate. It wasn't an argument, it was a debate. And it started from a discussion we were having about an article. And keep in mind, for those who don't already know this, that we're just radio geeks. And we don't even, I never even want to pretend to understand things like 3D printing. I guess I understand 3D printing a little bit, but it's the bioprinting that got us talking, because there was a story out of Scotland, I believe it was, and they were bioprinting ears and fingers, and the implication, and maybe even the actual fact, they were bioprinting organs like livers and kidneys, and I might be maybe that's more science fiction right now than reality, although I don't really know. But part of this had to do with an ethical question as to, where do we stop, and do we allow it, and where do we get the stem cells from? Is there an ethical reason why we need to take a second look at this? And one of the important questions was, well, wait a minute, if the United States says it's unethical, so therefore we're going to make it illegal, but Scotland says, no, there's nothing unethical about it, therefore it is legal. What's your real decision when you have a child that's going to die unless you get a transplant that's done with some kind of a bioprinted organ, right? Mm-hmm. In this science fiction discussion here. What would you do? Would you abide by the laws of your country, or would you say, you know what, I'm going to Scotland to save my son's life? That's what right. I would do. That's what I would do. I don't know if I'd be unethical. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Wesley J. Smith has thought about this way more than we have with our little radio geeky minds. He's on the phone. He was named by the National Journal as one of America's leading experts in the area of bioethics. He's a senior fellow of the Discovery Institute's Center on Human Exceptionalism. He's an attorney, and he's written a book. The book is called The War on Humans, Defending Human Dignity Before It's Too Late. And I apologize in advance to Wesley if the topic that I used to introduce him is not associated with the discussion he's about to have with us. So let's find out if I even came close. Wesley Smith. Good morning, Wesley.
Good morning, and hello to Florida. My in-laws live up in Vero Beach.
Oh, really? Well, where are you?
I'm in San Francisco Bay Area. So, we're not in Florida here.
Oh, my goodness. Well, you're way out there then, and got up early to be with us, and I appreciate that. So there are so many things associated with what we can do that we might want to think twice about because of ethical reasons, and I don't even pretend to understand them. I just put myself in the shoes of somebody who needs somebody who has to have the care. Am I being unethical by thinking that way?
No, I mean, this is the world in which we live. The book, The War on Humans, which is an ebook and then also a documentary, doesn't go into those kinds of bioethical issues. This is about how environmentalism is actually being poisoned by an anti-humanism that I think threatens all the good that environmentalism does. The idea of humans as a cancer on the planet, this kind of thing. What you're talking about is connected, because a lot of these issues, and if people take a look at the work I've been doing, over the last 20 years, they all get into, and this was not the plan, but it's how things turned out, they all get into what is the importance of human life? Does it have any special meaning? And I've used a term called human exceptionalism that I think describes what is unique about man. One is that we have unique value, unique dignity. The sanctity of life ethic is it's sometimes called. But the other is we're the only known moral agencies in the moral agents in the universe. Only we have a sense of right versus wrong, a sense of ought, O-U-G-H-T. And it is that human exceptionalism that requires us to treat animals humanely, for example, to treat people with disabilities properly, to prepare for our posterity, to treat the environment properly. But what we see happening in a lot of areas is the idea that being human is not morally relevant at all. And so you start seeing, well, let's do things to some human beings to benefit other human beings. And so these are all connected issues.
Okay, yeah, and I do see the connection. Okay, and I apologize for kind of going in the wrong direction, but there is a connection there. But let's stick with what you're talking about and be more accurate, I guess, is what I need to do. So it sounds like what you're saying is that when I jump on the bandwagon, let's say, and I say to Kentucky Fried Chicken, look, I don't like the way you're raising chickens because look at these pictures of all these chickens in a room, and somebody else might say, yeah, but look how many people are being fed. Is that kind of along the lines of what we're talking about?
Well, you're getting closer to the mark, I think. My last book, not this one, was called A Rat is a Pig is a Dog is a Boy, The Human Cost of the Animal Rights Movement. And the term animal rights is used way too loosely. You're talking about animal welfare. How should we humanely and properly treat animals that we use, for example, in that circumstance for food? The animal rights movement says that we shouldn't be allowed to eat animals at all. The animal rights movement says that humans and animals are moral equals. People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals is a classic example. They say that we all have an ethical duty to be vegan. That is not only not to eat animals, but not to even have leather belts. In fact, they had and this is really to me very despicable, they had for many years a pro-vegan campaign that they brought to college campuses, rock concerts, because their targets are the young. And they basically said that if you eat meat, it's like you're supporting Auschwitz. And let me give you a quote.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this is a quote from them. The leather sofa, handbag, and handbag are the modern equivalent of the lampshades made from the skins of the people killed in the death camps. That's from the PETA's Holocaust on Your Plate campaign. You know, I've been to Birkenau. I've been to Auschwitz. I've stood in a gas chamber. I've walked that horrible rail terminus where Jews were divided for immediate slaughter or slave labor, and any movement that can't distinguish between animal husbandry and real evil has no business preaching morality to anyone. But this is the kind of thinking you're beginning to see more and more. It's an anti-human idea. In the current book, The War on Humans, for example, I point out that something called nature rights, not just animal rights, but nature rights is now moving forward very powerfully in the agenda. Let me read to you what nature rights are.
Okay.
Nature, or Pachamama, where life is reproduced and exists, and by the way, Pachamama is the Incan earth goddess. Where life is reproduced and exists, has the right to exist, persist, maintain, and regenerate its vital cycles. This is sort of a right to life for nature, and the idea is this, that when nature rights becomes the law, anytime human beings wish to use the land, use the resources to benefit ourselves, if anybody thinks that violates the rights of nature, they can come in and seek to impede it with a lawsuit. Now, the rights of nature is the law of Ecuador and Bolivia, and you might say, well, they're just South American countries, a few small, that doesn't matter. But it's also the law of 30 American cities, including Santa Monica and Pittsburgh. You know, I grew up in Los Angeles. I know Santa Monica like the back of my hand. There's no nature left in Santa Monica. So why would they do this? It's because it's a statement to try to say that human beings are just another animal in the forest. Nature rights has been supported by Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General of the United Nations, and it's proposed for inclusion in the Global Warming Treaty. Now, if you have nature rights in the Global Warming Treaty that applies throughout the world, and let's say destitute people in Africa seek to exploit their resources to increase their well-being and welfare, they could be stopped by international bureaucrats or international lawyers seeking to prevent them from violating the rights of nature. And this is where anti-humanism becomes potentially destructive, because not only would it thwart our own prosperity in the developing world. In fact, you see in the global warming fight advocacy against growth, advocacy for economic decline to save the planet. But it would also keep the poorest among us, the poorest of our brothers and sisters, mired in destitution, and that's not compassion.
No, of course not. So is there hypocrisy among those who are trying to get us to change our laws in this direction? In other words, are they pro-abortion, but what was that? Pachamama?
Pachamama, yeah.
Yeah.
Most of these, most of these people would be pro-abortion. and then pro Pachamama.
See, that doesn't make that, and that's the part that doesn't make sense to me. Is why would you be? I guess I can understand it. Not that I would agree with it, but I could understand it if you were absolutely sure that we are all, and we are all part of this whole big planet. I mean, we do have to kind of be good stewards of the land and of our fellow occupants of the planet. But I think at the same time you have to think of humans, and I think that's where I'm on the same.
That's what's being lost, and that's why I call it the war on humans, because proper environmentalism supports human thriving as it requires us to use proper environmental practices. And here's another example. New Zealand has named a river, it's called the Wanganui River, as a person, granting full rights of personhood as a, quote, integrated living whole, possessing, quote, rights and interests. Now, we have protected Yellowstone for more than, almost 150 years, and we did it very well without declaring that Old Faithful Geyser is a person. This is a way of saying human beings are just another animal in the forest, and they think that'll make us tread more lightly on the earth. And I suggest otherwise. If all we think of ourselves as another animal in the forest, that's precisely how we'll act. And here's something that's been happening to children. There are, and I worry quite a bit about the fear mongering into children's lives. There's a group called the 1010 campaign that seeks to have people reduce global warming, carbon emissions by 10% to stop global warming.
Right.
And they have an ad called the No Pressure ad, and it shows elementary kids in a school, and the teacher talks about the 1010 campaign and asks, how many are going to join in? And most of the kids raise their hands. And how many aren't? And two kids kind of sheepishly raise their hands. We just aren't convinced. And she pushes a button, and those kids explode in a very graphic, bloody mess.
Oh.
And the message is, if you don't think right about saving the earth, you deserve to die.
Oh.
That is what is happening in this kind of anti-human advocacy around radical environmentalism. Environmentalism has done so much good to this world, but how many of us are going to follow the green flag when it says you're a cancer on the earth and you should die if you don't agree with our objectives?
Wow, good point. Wow. Wesley J. Smith is our guest, and his book is called The War on Humans, and I believe you probably are familiar with his other one, and I didn't know you were the author of A Rat is a Pig, Is a Dog, Is a Boy. I remember we were talking about that. Maybe maybe we just did it in your absence, but I remember we brought it up. It was a year ago, maybe?
I think so, yeah.
When did the book...
My ears were burning.
Well, because this is the kind of topic we've covered before, although not as well as you can do it. So the fact that you are saying some cities have adapted the law that you...
Yeah, nature rights, Pittsburgh, Santa Monica, and many others. Santa Monica didn't mention Pachamama, but it's the same language otherwise. And this is being promoted, as I said, at the highest levels of international advocacy supported by the Secretary General of the United Nations. So this kind of it's anti-human in its advocacy, and it's anti-human in its impact, because it will make us make the world a poorer place. What do we need to have good environmental practices? Prosperity. Prosperity allows us to have environmental practices. Prosperity allows us to have liberty. And this kind of turning in on ourselves, becoming anti-human, actually endangers both prosperity and liberty.
I am not trying to be devil's advocate when I say this, but I wanted to bring up something from the other side. And this has always been my argument. When the global warming people have been on, and I will say to them, I had a scientist yesterday who exactly the opposite thinks that he's right, that if the earth is warming, it's not our fault. And then I would have this adamant, almost angry reaction, at least from one of them, I remember, saying, no, it's been proven, there is no more discussion, it is absolutely true, the earth is warming and we're at fault. then I would just say, okay, well, that's your belief, but the guy yesterday believed his way, and I'm just a radio geek. So how do I know? How do I know the difference?
Yeah.
But I do fly in airplanes, and I do see the atmosphere around Los Angeles when I land there, and I do know that it's dirty. Why can't we just say we need to be cleaner? Why do we have to tell people that you're literally destroying the earth with this global warming idea if they don't agree? And of course he said, we do agree. There's 2% that don't agree with us, and you had them on yesterday.
You're playing my tune, and of course that kind of adamant advocacy is anti-science. The science isn't settled. People say, do you think global warming is a fraud? I don't think global warming is a fraud, but I also don't think it's a fact. There has been no global warming discernible, statistically significant, for 17 years. And now the people who are, I call them global warming hysterics, are saying, well, it's because of volcanoes, or, well, it's because of the ocean. You know, in science, when your models don't prove out what you expect, sometimes what you're supposed to do is take a look to make sure your hypothesis is correct. And that's what I don't see happening. Because this isn't just about science, it's about politics. It's about, in my view, global warming seeks to create an international technocracy where these international scientists and bureaucrats are basically in charge of our economies and our national sovereignty. That's beyond the scope of what I write about in The War on Humans. But I do point out, just as an example, the many crazy, hysterical things global warming activists have said. Himalayan glaciers will disappear by 2035. That was in a UN report. Then they had to sheepishly said, oh, no, that was wrong. The polar bears are going to drown. Well, there are actually more polar bears than there were 40 years ago. Global warming is melting the snows of Kilimanjaro. No, actually, they're coming back, and that was caused not by global warming, but by deforestation. Warming will stop snow in England. There was somebody who said the English kids won't see snow. That was a few years ago. Now they're drowning in snow. You know, I mean, all of this is hysteria. The reason why people are not following the global warming Pied Piper is because global warming hysterics have made fools of themselves. Instead of dealing with this as an issue that says, gee, we have to really grapple with this, let's take a look at proper approaches, they have tried to say that anybody who dissents is like a Holocaust denier. They have tried to stifle debate. And the harder you work to stifle debate, the less confident you seem in your position.
You know, there was a story, was this morning or yesterday? The date on the story is the 25th, so let's say the 27th. Just 2 days ago, listen to this. This is here in Florida. A Cape Coral woman here in Florida living off the grid was ordered last week by a magistrate to hook up to utilities, the municipal utilities. She's been using... What do you call it? She's been gathering rainwater, so she doesn't use the city water.
Right.
And she's been using solar cells to help
for
get the electricity.
Yeah.
And she's been ordered.
I thought we were supposed to like that.
I know.
Right.
I know, and that's what I don't understand. It's almost like you're being demanded to. See, that's why I say, why don't we just pay attention to being good stewards? Why?
Well,
yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But that doesn't give power. That doesn't give power to the technocracy and to the bureaucrats if you're good stewards. Of course we should be good stewards. That's an obligation of being human. But what I see is a growing green authoritarianism. For example, a lot of advocates who think we're killing the earth, you see that. How often do you see it? Where cancer's killing the earth?
Yeah.
Well, we'll look at China's one-child policy, because radical depopulation also becomes part of this agenda. China's one-child policy has involved female infanticide, forced abortion, and yet many very mainstream environmental activists have applauded it. Let me give you one example. Sir David Attenborough. This is as establishment as you get. He's the fellow who does all those wonderful wildlife documentaries. Mm-hmm. He has said we are a plague, his words, on the earth, and that he has applauded China's one-child policy because it has helped reduce their population. But I point out in the War on Humans, it's only reduced the rate of growth. It hasn't actually reduced the number of Chinese. If you're going to actually reduce the number of people, voluntary birth control and benign measures aren't going to do it. That's why you see a lot of university professors, not a lot, but some, who are into this craziness say they hope for a wild pandemic because they want 90% of Earth of human beings gone because that will save the planet. You even see documentaries and books about how wonderful and beautiful the Earth would be if we weren't here. But nobody would be there to appreciate it.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just absolutely insane.
Yeah, no, wow. I'm so glad that you're on the air to talk about this, and I'm sure that this listenership is appreciating it as well. And it makes sense. And doesn't it just ring true? Mm-hmm. It just rings true. All right. You have a book. It's called The War on Humans, and hopefully those listening got that already. How do we get the book?
It's an ebook, and I did it on purpose because you can link to some of the things, like you can link to that commercial I mentioned about the kids blowing up.
Okay.
Right from the book. If you go to waronhumans.com, there's a link to the Nook and to the Kindle edition of the ebook, and there's also a free accompanying documentary on YouTube. It's 30 minutes. And you can access that, too. And the book's only $1.99. We're not here trying to make money. We're here trying to kind of reverse the anti-humanism and environmentalism and get back to a proper stewardship approach that you've already described.
It makes some sense. Yeah. And I think some of the chicken farmers and the farmers in general that have felt the wrath of PETA have actually had their livings compromised.
Right.
Oh, you see a lot of that, and you've also, unfortunately, seen a lot of violence against animal researchers trying to find cures for cancer.
Yes. Yeah, that's an important thing to remind ourselves of as well. Well, Wesley, thank you for getting up early to be with us today out in San Francisco. It's not the normal message, by the way, that we get from San Francisco. Wesley J. Smith, The War on Humans. Go to waronhumans.com and you can buy the book. You can watch the free video. And the book is one of those interactive books where it's but you can click on things and see the video he was talking about. Wesley, thank you so much for being on the air with us today.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Great stuff. We'll take a little break and be right back.
We're listening to WOCA News Talk 1370, Ocala's source for what's happening in today's hottest, up-to-date news and topics.
You've got a garden, and we've got a show for you called You've Got a Garden with your host, Master Gardener Carol Ann Baldwin. Carol Ann answers your questions about your flowers, your veggies, your grass, your trees, even questions about your bugs.